Hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And I am so excited still. So every time I do one of these shows for leaders living their values, I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. I'm so looking forward to the next person I'm speaking with. And right now I'm so excited to have Todd Cherches here, who he was actually part of the 500 interviews that help create the structure around credibility and what I'm doing with Credibility Nation. And he's part of the 100 coaches, and he's a pretty cool dude. Todd, welcome.
Thanks, Mitchell. Yeah, we knew each other before. We both ended up in 100 coaches. So it's nice to see our paths crossing and crisscrossing and recrossing. So that's great.
Absolutely. And so I'd like to say and throw the ball over to you and say, Todd, who are you?
Who am I? Walt Whitman said, I am multitudes. So, we're all a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So many lives, many careers in the last 20, 30 years. So basically, I'm the CEO of BigBlueGumball. We're an executive coaching and leadership development firm. I'm an adjunct professor of leadership at NYU and Columbia. I've been teaching at NYU for 12 years and Columbia for 8. And what else? I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm the author of the book Visual Leadership, Leveraging the Power of Visual Thinking and Leadership and in Life. It's all about how do we get people to see what we're saying, and how do we get to see things from other people's perspectives, and how do we turn visions into realities.
All right, so that's the work you. Who's the rest of you?
Who's the rest of me? Someone once described me on one of the workshop evaluations as the Seinfeld of leadership, and I always like that because as a native New Yorker and a Seinfeld fan who's memorized pretty much every episode of all 9 seasons, I always try to use some observational humor in my training and coaching, and make it fun, because life's too even with serious business, life's too short to take everything too seriously. So if you had some fun, some humor, some creativity and innovation, it just our motto for BigBlueGumball is we make training entertaining. So we try to live that value and make things fun. And when people are having fun, they feel better. You're more creative. You treat each other better. It helps to reduce stress. So if we can weave some humor and fun into everything that we do, which is one of my core values, I think we're more effective and more successful.
So speaking of fun, tell me about family hobbies. What else?
Sure. Wife, no kids, 2 puppies. One is going to be 2, one is going to be 1, and the center of our life. We put off getting a dog. I had a dog when I was a kid from age 12 to 29. So she lived 17 years. And I never thought I would love another dog again. And then we got Lucy. And then a year later, we got Rosie. So, but live in New York City and Connecticut, go back and forth between both locations. Try to stay safe from the dreaded COVID. I was sick for 2 weeks, but I said I don't want to spread any computer viruses. So I showed you my official negative test.
Just so you know, Todd said, Mitchell, I have to show this to you so you'll permit me to come on the air with you.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, after testing positive every day for like 2 weeks, it was so exciting to get this negative test yesterday and to finally be feeling better after a few bad days. So, but yeah, so that's me. So I'm a big baseball fan. Yankees and Mets both having amazing seasons this year. So, and I play softball on 2 different softball teams. So I'm still playing, even though I just turned 60. I'm still, I'm actually in my 3 games. I'm 10 for 10. So I have yet to make it out. So I should just retire right now. I should just end my career. But I have a game next week. So I can't, now that I'm back from and feeling better, I'll be back on the softball field in Central Park next week.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my God, how cool is that? So you and I, because we had interviewed up front, you actually had a CPOP, a customer point of possibilities. Share that.
Yeah, very simply, it's leaders realizing their vision. How do we turn ideas into action and actions into results? How do we make our visions into reality? So I help leaders realize their vision.
I love that. And what does that mean from, like, what values are core when you're talking to a leader who wants to realize their vision? What values is important for them to think about, to focus on?
Well, one of them is that as a leader, it's not all about you, right? It's about the idea and it's about the people. So one of the on the cover of my book, you can see a rainbow colored eye. The rainbow eye represents the fact that just as no one in the world has this color eye, no one in the world sees the world through the same lens that you do. And what we need to do is flip the eye. We need to turn the eye around and look internally at our biases, our assumptions, our belief systems, which were all shaped by who we are how we grew up, our life experiences, our culture, our education, etc. But we also need to realize that not only do we need to turn the mirror on ourselves to see what we believe and who we are and how we are as leaders, we need to flip the eye and try to see the world through the lens of other people, through the lens of the people we lead. So that's a core value too, is to remind leaders that yes, aspirationally, you want to be go up the ladder and be the best leader you could be, but you're only the best leader if you're a good leader in the eyes of the people that are followers. And one of the responsibilities of a leader is to help develop the next generation of leaders. So it basically, that's a long-winded way of saying, as a leader, it is not about you. It's about the people that you lead.
How do you reinforce that? So when you talk, like if you pick up a client and is there a certain percentage that still feel that it's about them versus about those they serve?
Yeah, a lot of leaders want to be the smartest person in the room. They want to be the hero and the savior and the center of attention. Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of our mentors, you can see his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right on the shelf right behind me. That's one of my coaching Bibles. He talks about how leaders are very often effective.
I'm still reading this right now.
Okay, that's his new one. That's next up on my reading list. So he talks, what got you here won't get you there is reminds us that who you are and how you are as a leader got to where you are, but may not get you to where you want to be next. And he talks about the 20 workplace habits that you need to break, right? So a lot of times we're successful and effective, not because of how we are, but in spite of how we are. And if we don't change, then we may get stuck there. So we need to constantly be reminding ourselves that it's not about you and being a star and being the smartest person in the room. It really is about helping to create a better world and a better place, and to make your vision a reality, but also to help other people make their visions a reality. So they do need a reminder of that very often, I realize.
I assume, as I'm hearing you speak, that that's something that is part of you. Like when you're coaching somebody, it has nothing to do about you. It has to do with.
Yeah, I mean, what drove me into doing what I do today is the fact that I hold the Guinness Book of World Record for having the worst bosses who've ever set foot on this planet. So I don't know if that's official, but I did submit that to the Guinness Book and see if I'm waiting for them to call me back. But I worked in two industries that are notorious for bad management and leadership: the entertainment industry and Wall Street, right? So the values in those industries tends to be about ego, power, control, and money. It's not about self-development. It's not about making the world a better place. You hope that in the entertainment industry, people want to entertain people and make the world a better place through putting out entertaining movies, books, TV shows, etc. But so much of the value in that industry is about being the star. Like a lot of times people go into these businesses to make a lot of money and to be rich and famous. That's not what leadership is all about. So I think when you're trying to do management leadership development in those industries, it's a battle. It's a battle to remind people that, hey, it's not enough to just make money. It's about what are you doing with that money? Are you helping to make the world a better place? Are you helping to enrich other people? Or is it, again, just having a bigger house and a nicer car?
What other values are relevant for you? What's important? What's core?
Leading with kindness and caring. I always say that caring and kindness are a competitive advantage. Again, being a bad boss, what I call boss holes. I've had many of them. Again, being a manager is not just about telling other people what to do and how to do it, right? It's about, are you trying to get the most out of people, or are you trying to get the best out of people? There's a subtle distinction there, and sometimes they're in conflict, right? As a leader, are you doing what's best for the person? Let's say someone comes to you, your top performer comes to you and says, I have a better job offer. As a manager, do you selfishly say, what can I do to manipulate this person or force them or coerce them into staying? Or do I say, you know what, this is a career growth opportunity. I'm going to let this person fly the coop, spread their wings and fly, because that's what's best for them. As a manager, that's a tough decision, but which decision do you make, right? Do you do what's best for the person, or you do what's best for you? The true leader will let the person go, right? And there's a lot of parallels to parenting as well, right? There's a lot of parents who try to keep their kids in a box and want them to do what they want them to do. Or do you encourage your kids to fulfill their own dreams, and even if it may not be what you dreamed for them? So our values and our actions are intertwined, right? Our behaviors and actions are the best litmus tests for what we really believe in and what our values are and what we really think is important.
It's interesting. What's a typical client for you?
There's no typical. I mean, I coach across and train people across all industries, all functions, but it really is someone who wants to get better. Marshall always says, don't coach people who don't want to be coached. So for years, I struggled with trying to coach people who really weren't invested in their own development. And when companies bring me in, there's two types of coaching. There's this person is broken, we need you to fix them or they're out in 6 months. Or this person is good and we want you to help them get to great. Or they're great and we want you to help them be even greater, right? So one is coaching a punishment or a perk, right? So a lot of times I'm brought in to coach someone and it's almost a punishment. It's like this person needs fixing versus this is a perk. We are going to invest in this person, time, energy, money, into helping this person develop into the leader that we believe that they can be. So my ideal client is someone who says, help me become the best version of myself, right? Getting from good to great and great to greater. So yeah, so if people think they're perfect and they don't need to be fixed or helped or changed, then it's very hard to coach that person who thinks that they're already perfect. So yeah.
I'm pretty sure I mentioned this to you. One of the interviewees I had on the 500, and this is what caused me to realize that if you're not coachable, you're not credible. They ended up recognizing or saying to me, "Hey, Mitchell, I had said," because they were trying to get their CPOP. It was like 30 seconds long, and I said, "Hey, would you mind a little bit of coaching?" And his response was, "Yes, I do. I have my way of doing things, and you apparently have yours, and I don't want to learn yours." And we didn't do the interview. And so that's why one of the 10 elements, like the so important, one of the 10 elements of being credible is being coachable. I'm wondering if of the two groups, I would assume, so let's do that you brought in for two different reasons. One, because it is they need to get fixed or get booted, and two, they need to go get better, whatever that is, better, greater, greatest, right? Does either one have a bigger propensity of potentially not being coachable?
Yeah, the person who needs fixing and doesn't think they do. Again, this is where companies might do a 360 and get feedback. One of the things I found when we do 360s is, let's say as one example, listening. Listening seems to be the skill or trait that people score themselves the highest in, but their people score them the lowest in. So I always say the biggest gap is between the ears because they're just not even listening to that feedback when they get it, right? They think they're a great listener, but if your people say you're not, do you resist that and get defensive, or do you say, you know what, maybe I need to think about that? If that's the feedback I'm getting from 80% of my people, maybe I need to think about working on it, right? So then it's like, how can you help me be a better listener? Our MG100 colleague, Mark Goldsmith, has a book called Just Listen. That's my #1 resource when it comes to how to become a better listener. So I'm always trying to collect. I'm a big, one of my other core values is just continuous learning and reading and looking at everything as a teachable moment. You can see from my bookshelf behind me, I'm an avid reader. I've been reading one business book a week since 1998, so for about 23 years. So I've been reading about 50 business books a week. That adds up to over 1,100, almost 1,200 business books I've read. So one of my core values is that Socrates said, all I know is that I know nothing. The more you learn how much you don't know. So that's one of my core values as well, is that we all need to admit what we don't know and say, all right, I could learn, I could grow, I could practice, I could become better. And there is no, to use some of my visual props, there is no magic wand. You actually have to do the work. You need to be innately curious. Always ask why, question everything. We need to be flexible and bend over backwards to serve our clients. I could do this all day long. So, but that's the power of visual imagery and visual thinking, is to come up with new ideas and new ways of doing things. So if you looked into your crystal ball, Mitchell, what do you see for yourself in the future? What do you need to change to be even more effective. So not to be a prop comic, but the power of visuals is to get people to change the picture of the future and envision a different and a better you. So those are just a few of my ways of incorporating some humor into saying people need to open up their minds to create the space for new possibilities. So I'll stop there.
No, I even love that you throw the prop behind you. Yeah, it's I know it's a rhetorical question, but for me, I don't know if it's what I think I need to change. It's as I listen to my customers and my prospects, they're telling me what I need to change.
Yeah, we need to read between the lines, right? Peter Drucker once said the most important part of communication is to hear what isn't being said. So a lot of times people will not say something straight out and say, Mitchell, you need to create this, but we'll get feedback basically invisibly in many cases based on how people respond to us. Like what is, in the absence of, I would say in the absence of feedback, we fill that void of silence with negativity. So sometimes we fill it with doubt and saying, oh, if I send an email to someone and they didn't get back to me, do they hate me? Do they not like me anymore? Did they think it was stupid? What did I do wrong? And it could be that they were out of town or their computer went down or whatever. We create stories in our own minds. So one of the things that we need to do is get real factual information and validate our assumptions and biases and guesses. But yeah, sometimes people will explicitly give us feedback, but sometimes we need to read between the lines and take feedback out of how people interact with us, what people say or don't say to us.
Todd, we the definition that based on the interviews I pulled in for credibility is the quality in which we're trusted, known, and liked. Mm-hmm. And of the people I interviewed so far, you're the one that really smacks me in the back of the head that being liked is so important as being a leader.
It is. I have one of my models is called the hierarchy of followership, and it's in my book. The pyramid goes like, admire, respect, trust. It's great and nice to be liked. It's even nicer to be admired. It's more important to be respected, but it's most important to be trusted. So sometimes as a leader, you may make a decision that someone may not like or they may not like you for, but if they respect and trust you, then you're going to win them over. You're going to be able to lead them. So in the ideal world, we will be liked, admired, respected, and trusted by everyone. But I pose the question, can you like someone you don't trust? Can you trust someone you don't like? It's more important to be respected and trusted. So, but being likable, all of those things together help you to build your credibility, right? So credibility has the same root as trust and truth and believability and faith. Confidence means with faith, right? So if you have faith in someone else, you'll have confidence in them if you see them as credible, right? And they're credible if they're truthful and trustworthy. So it all ties together with everything that you always write and talk about.
I love that. Yeah, it was very cool to hear you say that. And in this conversation, it's how you come across. It's how you share things with other people. It's like if I'm feeling the values that you're sharing, right? It's the intent and commitment to do the right thing. It's being coachable. It's being likable. It's showing respect. Like these are all values of credibility that you just doing it in fun. You're sarcastic. You're standard New York guy, right? And it's admirable. It's very interesting to listen to.
Thank you, Mitchell. I would have guessed. Do you have any New York roots? Because I would have guessed you were a fellow New Yorker until you're in.
I was born in New York. Definitely an East Coast guy, and then lived in New Jersey for a while. Yeah,
okay. I would have guessed that.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because now that I'm in California, people feel the laid back approach, but the fire inside, all New York. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Yeah, the main thing I'm working on is slowing down. Even though I talk loud and fast, I'm from New York, I'm an extreme introvert. I would call myself a 3Bs kind of guy, a back of the room, behind the scenes bookworm by nature. So everything I do, and in my career over the years, it has been pushing myself well out of my comfort zone. I always tell my students in my NYU class, I have them all speak within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the class. And then I say to them, you all just spoke more than I spoke in all my years of junior high school, and college and graduate school combined, because I never once voluntarily got up and spoke in a class. And I was a communications major, and they didn't even make me get up and speak ever. So there's a certain irony there. But again, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. You know, I always use the Bernard Baruch quote that you can have the ability to communicate an idea is as important as the idea itself. So if we can't communicate our messages effectively, then it may be like a great idea in our minds, but if we're not getting it out into the world, we're not changing the world or changing other people. So we need to somehow figure out, whether it's through our writing, our speaking, or both, way to communicate our values through our actions, and also together help to make our visions a reality.
What is it that you feel like when I'm thinking about clients that you get brought into, and you do the best job possible with the person themselves, but there might be a core value inside the company that's getting in the way? What is that value? What is it that you run across?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the organizations, but and the roles that people have. But sometimes people, you know, are you asked by your boss to fudge the truth? Are you, you know, once, you know, when I think back, as you were asking, I was thinking back to myself. I once had a boss who, I won't mention where I was working at the time, but the legal department said that she didn't send down a memo. She insists she did. I know she didn't, and she asked me to white out the date and to put in the date that was required. Like, what do you do when you, as a person, you know, when you're put in that position? You know, there are many times earlier in my career where I was asked to do things that were unethical, immoral, or against my core values. And that's one of the reasons I left that business, because there were a lot of inconsistencies. But that's a tricky one when you're coaching someone and their values are not consistent with yours, or with their organization, or with the industry. So yeah, I mean, you coach people to be true to themselves, and you know, they know what the right thing to do is. Martin Luther King said, "The time is always right to do the right thing." That's one of my favorite Martin Luther King Jr.
I
quotes.
love that quote.
Yeah. So so it's up to them. I can only urge them or nudge them or give them the pros and cons, but it's up to them ultimately to decide what to do in those, you know, those tricky situations.
You know, it was interesting. I do on YouTube. I've got a channel where I answer a credibility question once a week. It's the old Dear Abby. I call it Dear Credibility Expert.
Oh.
And somebody asked a question, and I'd love to get your response. The question was, what do you do working for a boss who's known to not have integrity? And I went off and answered the question in 10 minutes. I don't always know the answer before I start talking. And I was surprised by my end response. But what would you say? What's your thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
you know, with the word integrity, I was asked to guest lecture at Fordham University in their real estate graduate program. There was a course in leadership and ethics in the real estate business, and I talked about the word integrity. A building has structural integrity if its foundation is solid. Similarly, a real estate agent only has integrity of character if their values are solid. So just like a building that does not have structural integrity, it's going to tip over and kill people. A leader without structural integrity in terms of their core values is going to tip over. They're not going to last that long. So yes, you could fudge things, you can cut corners, you can get away with things, but it's not sustainable. And is that who you want to be known for and what you want to be known as? So when you pose that question, you know, how would you feel if what you did was on the front page of the New York Times? How would you feel if what you just did, we went to your parents and said, this was the situation, this is what you're... So whatever barometers you use to measure your values and integrity, sometimes we're so caught up in the moment and these times of urgency and stress, we make decisions that we're not proud of or whatever. But if you just hit the pause button, stop, reflect, and say, is this what I want to be known for and known as? Then you have to make that decision and then live with it, the repercussions. So would you want your children to know that decision? As I'm talking, I don't know if you know the play and the movie All My Sons by Arthur Miller, who also wrote Death of a Salesman. But long story short, he owns an airplane munitions factory that made airplane parts during World War II, and cracked cylinder heads came out of the assembly line. And if he didn't ship them, he would lose his government contract. But if he did ship them, there was a chance that they could fail and the planes could crash. And not to, spoiler alert, cover your ears if you don't want to know the ending. His own son died in a plane crash caused by one of the cracked cylinder heads that he shipped, along with a number of other pilots. And that's where all my sons come from, is that to him, they were all his sons. Every one of those pilots who died was as much of a son as his own son who died. So that powerful story that I just told in 60 seconds, there's a whole 2-hour movie and play version. Just remember that. It's like, are you going to be the type of person who ships a cracked cylinder head out there into the world? And are you willing to live with those consequences?
Oh,
how powerful is that, right?
Oh, yeah. Beyond. Yeah. Ooh, gives me chills. Yeah. Todd, is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
Well, one, I mentioned I'm an extreme introvert, and now I'm a TEDx speaker, a college professor. I'm doing all these things. So one question you didn't ask is, how did I get from that behind-the-scenes, back-of-the-room bookworm, that 3Bs guy, into who I am and what I do today? So
by the way, I'm still going to say it's impressive how many books you read, but yeah, continue.
Thank you. So that's a question that wasn't asked. So.
Okay. Do you want me to ask it? So, Todd, how did you convert yourself from that introvert and still bookworm then and now into who you are today?
Yeah, it was a long transition, but the short version, one specific incident that shifted my mindset and led me down that path is I worked for a management leadership training company behind the scenes to help to design their leadership training programs. And I would work with the trainers, and I always sit in the back of the room and be in awe of them, their ability to command the room and do this training and facilitation. And one time we were doing a leadership program for CEOs, 12 CEOs down in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I got down there the night before to set everything up. The morning of the first day of the 3 days, I got a phone call. This was pre-email from the trainer saying he got sick, missed his flight, and wouldn't be there till day 2. What do you do? I called my boss back in New York and I said, what do I do? He said 2 options. We cancel and we have the complete embarrassment and we'll have to refund all this money, all these people who traveled in from all over the country, or he said that you're going to have to facilitate the first day. And I was like, excuse me, I think there's a bad connection, because I don't think I heard you correctly. Because again, I had never, ever spoken in public, never been in front of the room. And he said, you know the content inside and out, so see what you could do. And he said, don't let this was a key thing. He said, don't let the participants know that you're not the trainer. But in terms of my own values and integrity, I couldn't do that. So what I did is I told them the truth of what happened. And one of the CEOs said, and this is a line, I quote this in my book. He said, so gentlemen, our friend Todd here has a little bit of a problem. What are we going to do to help him get through this day? How's that for an example of leadership? So it became my facilitating with this group of 12 CEOs. And it was such a good day. And you know what? I was terrified of public speaking and terrible at it. I realized at the end of that first day, I wasn't that bad. And you know what? I really didn't hate it. I almost felt bad. Like when I heard the trainer was going to be there for day 2, I almost was like, oh, I would have been happy to do it the next day. But that was being forced into that situation where I had no other choice, like being at the edge of a high diving board where people are screaming, jump or get off. I jump and I dove. And you know what? It wasn't the end of the world. And then that planted the seed for, I took a public speaking course, and over time I got better at it. I got great feedback, and now I could do it all the time, and I actually enjoy it. So that's my crucible moment defining story of where I was thrust into a situation where I had to speak publicly, and that launched my career to the next level.
I love that. Congratulations, and congrats for getting over COVID.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if we all can point to different pivotal times in our lives. That's a great story.
Yeah, that's a leadership question I often ask. Was there a crucible moment or a turning point? Or it could be a firing, it could be a promotion, it could be something big or something just tiny, but something that someone said that made something click in your brain that said, I can do this, or I'm going to try this. Or so I'd love to hear you. If you have one, I'd love to hear yours. If you had a defining moment that made you think differently, or visualize a possibility that before that you had not thought possible.
Oh,
it's hard,
many.
It's hard on the spot.
Yeah, no, well, many. I've been thinking about them because in each of the TEDx's, I grabbed a pivotal moment, and the one that is the most relevant at the moment is when I was done with the interviews, when I had actually 95% of the way done interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility. I was doing it. It was a Napoleon Hill moment for me where I woke up and said, I got to interview 500. And I did a book, right? The book, Credibility Nation. And it was 95% of the way through that I realized that I've been tasked. The download was, Mitchell, the world needs to be more credible. And you know what it is that needs to happen. You need to start sharing.
Yeah.
And it was that enlightenment. It was something that I knew I was asked to maybe a lot of my life. But it was when you mentioned your CPOP, it was 98% of people cannot articulate who they serve and how they serve them in 10 words or less. And I believe it is relatively simple to do. It's just that we have all these marketing cookie cutter approaches standing in the way. And so if you could remove all those. So one of the things the interviews have done for me is I got rid of all those. Like I don't feel those anymore. I don't hear them. I don't see them. And when you remove those, the simplicity of being somebody who can do something that's as simple as what you say is so powerful.
Yeah.
And now I've had 2 years deploying it. And so it's this entire conversation, Todd, has been one in which I'm interpreting you through the lens of 10 values of credibility. I wouldn't have done that prior to the research, but more importantly, it wasn't just the mechanical stuff of doing the research. It was listening to the results and what the aggregate, both the micro and macro results were actually sharing.
Yeah. I always ask people, what do you want to be known as, the guru of or the go-to person for? Like what's the key word? Like I am the visual thinking guy, right? So when people think visual thinking, hopefully you are the credibility guy, right? So what is that label? What is that word? Because if there's a million coaches or a million trainers or speakers, how do you stand out in the crowd? What is your core competency? What are you really good at? What is your competitive advantage? What are you better at than others? Those are just a few ways to frame this. If you were going to do a TED Talk, that was the talk of your life, what would the topic be? Mine was the power of visual thinking, right? So it was like, what's your brand? What do you want to be known for, known as? And like you said, to simplify that complexity is one of the hardest things to do, is to define. You don't want to label yourself or put yourself in a box, but you want to be able to have a brand that people know you, buy, and think of you for if you want to build your business in that particular area.
Oh,
and it could change over time. So you're not stuck. You're not locked in. So don't feel like, I'm imprisoning myself. It's just, for right now, at this point in time, what's your thing, right? I mean, that's a way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I articulated the credibility thing in the CPOP, leaders living their values and making a difference. And by the way, that's the name of this podcast. So it's just, I'm living out loud how I think I'd like to serve. You are doing the same thing, which is what always gets me excited about talking to you.
Thanks, Mitchell. Same here.
Hey, so I'm just going to say thank you. If you've listened to this and you found it fascinating and you're thinking, I need a conversation with Todd Cherches too. Todd, how best can people reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is, one, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just say you saw me at the Mitchell Levy Credibility Show, so I'll know who you are and where you found me. Or go to my website, which is very simply my name, toddcherches.com. You can find my TED Talk there, information about my book, Visual Leadership, and you can sign up for my email list, so you'll be kept in touch on whenever new things pop up. So those are the two best ways to get in touch and stay in touch.
Todd, that's awesome. Thank you. And thanks for sharing today, because if you're paying attention, we don't script anything. We just talk and you get to really feel somebody's values. Are you feeling like they're just sharing what they always share, or something really cool is coming out? And I felt really cool stuff coming out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, if you're still here, it's time to spread some cred dust. Click on the like button, share with your friends, comment on what was the most exciting to you. And we'll see you at the next episode. Thanks so much. Todd, thanks again. Take care, everyone.